And I think we're good.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. And we are rejoined by our returning champion, Cindy Sheehan. Cindy Sheehan is a wonderful anti-war activist, anti-imperialist activist. She's the host of her own podcast, Cindy Sheehan's Soapbox. She's a founder she's a founder and a member of. Let me get that organization so I don't mess it up. With March on the Pentagon, and she's also part of another campaign now, which we're going to talk about, which is called Justice for Justice for COVID-19 Eldercide. But before we get into that, Cindy, thank you very much for coming back on 1+1.
Thank you for inviting me, Yuri, and thank you for your patience this week with all my personal nonsense going on.
and in case people are wondering what the inside joke is, yes, this whole week has been sort of Groundhog's Day trying to get an interview with you. I think first it was that your internet wasn't working, and then the second time it was
I forgot.
Yeah, exactly. Then the third time it was family duties, and I think the fourth time I think I contacted you, but it was just like, did we even agree to Friday? And I was like, okay, don't worry, Saturday it is.
Well, you know what, the internet issue was because of the storms and the rain and the wind here. So a lot of people's power was off. A lot, because we pay this exorbitant amount of money to our power company, but they can't seem to keep the power on when there's the slightest little hiccup in the weather or whatever, and that's a concern. That's part of this big picture of public power should be publicly owned, not privately owned for profit. And our power company is called PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. Since they have been founded, they've been founded on corruption and graft and political graft. Even like to today, our last governor, Jerry Brown, officials in San Francisco are really cozy with PG&E. And so a few years ago, they burned an entire town down here in Northern California called Paradise. They barely
I remember that.
Dozens of people were killed. They barely got a slap on the wrist for that. And so, and to top it off, our rates keep on just skyrocketing, and they can't seem to figure out how to, like I said, keep the power on when we really need it. But it's just really a dreadful company, and so
actually, and then on top of that, funny that you mentioned that. But now a lot of the forest fires that California gets, I mean, yes, you can blame some of it on climate change, but isn't a lot of it because you always hear when you follow American news, whether it's corporate media or left-leaning media or independent media, that America has an infrastructure problem, that America's infrastructure is completely out of date. Nothing, and from New York to California to Oklahoma, nothing has ever been updated. And now one of the reasons why there was huge wildfires in California last year was because you have this sort of like electric is because of the electricity is so out of date that if a storm does hit or if lightning does hit and those things flicker, that's more or less what causes the forest fires, right?
Well, that's what happened to Paradise. It was I believe it was like a big transformer that blew, a PG&E transformer, and that's frequently the case. The big fire in Santa Rosa in Sonoma a few years ago, completely caused by PG&E. So it's their ancient equipment. I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, or a little bit less, pipeline, natural gas pipeline blew up in San Bruno, California. A whole neighborhood, killed many people. So it's the ancient infrastructure, it's forest management. Trump got a lot of heat last year for saying, well, they should just rake the forests. Well, it used to be the Native Americans would just let a forest fire go because it would burn all the dead debris, and then actually it'd be bad, but then it would be better for a while. Plus, it really helps the soil and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of issues, and I think since I come from Southern California, which didn't used to have these big fires, but now they do. But, since we've lived here, I don't see any change. The high winds like crazy where we live. And I think it mostly has to do with the infrastructure and PG&E not maintaining or having to maintain. The Public Utilities Commission is in their pocket, in PG&E's pocket, and the politicians are in PG&E's pocket. So yeah, it's just a disastrous thing. And so that was a little thing last week when the power was off and the internet wasn't working, or it wasn't working right. It's annoying, but it's really a way bigger issue than this.
Yeah, and then funny enough, is that even some is
And
that even
you don't even know how pissed off I get every month when I have to pay those monsters.
and then but sadly, something that's also quite annoying about progressive left-leaning candidates is that even though it's great when they, in the Bernie Sanders or an Ilhan Omar and AOC campaigns for, raising, $15 minimum wage for, McDonald's workers or a worker like that, but the bar is so low that it's like, yes, we want single-payer healthcare. Yes, we want to give people a minimum wage. But when you talk about like nationalizing the banks or nationalizing electricity or having having public transportation being nationalized and investing in that, it's like no, guys, this is a time out. That's too left. Even that's too left for America. Yeah.
I know, but it's really the only thing that makes sense. We have a few, Alameda, I think, has publicly owned utilities, and they don't have near the problems that we do here that are under PG&E. But speaking of Sanders, I read that his 15 now is mostly like 15 slowly, incrementally now. Now that he's on a committee where he can actually like make some difference, he's the chair of the budget committee, I guess, or some committee. Now he's saying, well, I wasn't talking about like right now. I was talking, when now I meant, incrementally. Maybe, I don't know what his time frame is, but probably sometime way after he's dead. And 15 now, when they started saying that, wasn't even a living wage. It's even less a living wage than it was when they started talking about it.
It's unbelievable, unbelievable. And we're going to actually talk about some of the about what to expect now with this incoming administration. But the first thing I want to talk to you about, we talked about this briefly the last time you were on, but I actually want to talk about this more since the ongoing coronavirus crisis is dominating the news. And when I last had you on, like I said, you're part of an organization called Justice For COVID19 Eldercide, and yeah. So talk to us about this campaign you're involved with, this organization you're involved in, because it is an issue which isn't getting a lot of attention, and it should get a lot of attention, especially when everybody keeps talking about how awful each of the governments and the local government's response to coronavirus has been. So yeah, so talk to us about the campaign on the Eldercide.
Well, the saddest thing about it really is that not very many people care. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and there's at least 7 or 8 state governors who had this policy. And the policy was we had to shut everything down for 2 or 3 weeks last March. They said to flatten the curve. They said not to overwhelm the hospitals or whatever. And so what the state governors, I think beginning with Mario Cuomo, not Mario, Andrew Cuomo
in New York.
In New York. Mario, I think, was his father. They had this policy written down, but now we archived the orders, but saying that they were going to put recovering COVID-19 patients in long-term care facilities, which could be anything from, people recovering from accidents to elderly people, and, memory care facilities, people with Alzheimer's, whatever. And so I don't even like calling them care facilities anymore, because there was a problem with them before Corona. That very few people they don't care because they're the old people. But my thing is, you're very young. I was your age once. I'm 63. I could have parents. Both my parents are dead, but I could have parents in these care facilities right now. I told my children if they put me in one of those, I would haunt them for like the rest of their life.
Funny, my mother says the exact same thing. Yeah.
Just put a pillow over my face. Don't put me in one of those places. But so they said they were going to put recovering, instead of staying in hospitals or going into rehab facilities or facilities that were more geared to caring for COVID-19 patients, they put them in these long-term care facilities or nursing care facilities. And that was their written policy of doing so. And at least Andrew Cuomo, before he did it, exempted them from any liability. They said, if you take these patients, you won't have any liability. And so I started seeing that last April of, stories of elderly people dying because of this. There was some very few news stories, but there was more people giving their personal testimonies about what was happening to their parents or grandparents or whomever they had in these places. And then Pennsylvania did it. And the person who was appointed, that Biden appointed, I think as deputy health
secretary or
secretary.
something.
I was thinking minister, but we don't call it minister. We call it secretary here.
Yeah.
Rachel Levine, formerly Richard Levine, right before Pennsylvania got this policy, she took her mother out of one of these facilities, right? And so then I saw, right after I was noticing that it was happening in New York, my governor, Gavin Newsom, had a press conference saying that he was going to do the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, it is like eldercide in New York because of this policy. And then I started researching. There's a lot of people who are elder advocates who were begging him not to do this. And the thing is that they were saying there's so many things. Hotels are empty. Why don't you put people in there? The people who work at long-term nursing facilities or care homes, they're not trained. They can be LVNs. They're usually not RNs. They're usually nursing assistants or just people who mop the floor or whatever, orderlies.
Yeah.
There's very few really
medically trained
medical professionals in these places. If they have a doctor, he or she might come a couple times a week or whatever, and they're usually run by bureaucrats, right? They have no medical training. So these people are saying, put them in a convention center that's empty, put them in all these hotels that are empty. Please don't put them in with our elders. So, like you said, it's not a story that is getting much energy. And I just think if we're lucky enough, we're going to be in our 70s or 80s or 90s or whatever at one point. How would we like to be treated like this? And on top of all this stuff that they did it almost seems purposeful because New York State is saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year on the benefits they don't have to pay now, because states usually pay for the fees for nursing care facilities after the patients like exhaust all their resources. Then they kick in, and of course there's Medicare, or that's federal, but most states have a supplemental. Like here in California, we have Medi-Cal. So I forget who did it. Was it Kissinger that called us useless eaters?
Sounds like something he would say.
Yeah, and so it just became this thing where it was like over half of the deaths were these elders at some point last year, probably like in the early fall. We found out that like half of the deaths from COVID-19 were from these elders who were put, and not only were they like trapped in this place with sick people, they can't have any of their family members come and visit them. It just breaks my heart into like so many pieces that, and some of these people who are in the care facilities, sometimes they're quite nice, if you're wealthy and you can afford to go into a senior housing development that you have your own little place, but there's people who check on you all the time. I mean, a lot of these elders still have like their facilities, their faculties, and they're still quite active. They couldn't go outside, they couldn't gather together, they couldn't have anybody visit them, and it's almost like they got put into prison. And of course, nobody loves our family more than we love our family. So if I had my mother or father still alive and in one of those things, we would be super careful. I wouldn't say, let's just all five of my grandkids and three of my children, let's just like all like 10 of us go and visit mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, but at least let somebody who is taking the proper precautions go in, and because that's the only thing before COVID that kept these places honest. Right? Were people coming to visit, they knew that they had somebody who cared about them. And the patients who didn't, sometimes they would lay in their filth all day. So it was just a terrible thing. And I think about all the measures that have been put into place over this past almost year is that they've targeted the youngest and the oldest among us, and youth suicide is skyrocketing because I just read of a 9-year-old
because of the forced lockdowns and not being allowed to go to school, and only being allowed to see one or two people outside of the bubble.
And how long is continuing? I just read a story about a 9-year-old who committed suicide, and her note said, "I have no hope." 9 years old. I have a 9-year-old grandson. I have a 10-year-old grandson, an 11-year-old granddaughter, and 12-year-old grandson and all of them are in some type of counseling, thank goodness, through school or their insurance or whatever, because even if you have a good family with good parents, good grandparents, yay me, that it's hard. It's just super difficult. And my daughter is a teacher, so we have it on the other side too. She's not, we don't just have students and parents and grandparents. We have a teacher, an aunt who's a teacher. And in a neighboring school district, a 11-year-old boy shot himself when he was in school.
And that's because of all of the because of the effects of the lockdown.
Right. The hopelessness. Kids aren't meant to be isolated, and nobody's meant to be isolated, except unless you want to. Some people are interviewed. Sometimes I lie. Yeah, I'm closed. I'm closed for the day or 2 days or whatever, but that's my choice. So there's no choice in this. So it's the isolation. We're social beings usually. And so it has hurt the youngest and the oldest. And so we've tried to, in Justice for COVID-19 Eldercide, we've tried to see if there's any, because we're just very small group of people who care. And is there any legal things happening? And the most recent thing was, I think it was somebody who was going to run for attorney general in Michigan was talking about suing Governor Whitmer there for her part in this eldercide. So yeah, it's just a terrible thing, and it's just because people are old or people are young, and they're not like worker bees for capitalism or ants, right?
Yeah.
We just can't cast them aside. We just can't pretend like they're not there and that they don't count.
So and then just a follow-up question, just to get some clarifications on the campaign against Eldercide. So these now most of these patients, most of these elderly folk, did they actually have coronavirus and they just decide to push them into these these for-profit facilities, or was it just or was just under the banner of okay, our hospitals are being overwhelmed because of coronavirus, so therefore we have to put these these elderly patients.
It wasn't just elderly patients.
Okay.
It was a broad range of people recovering from COVID-19 that were put in these elder care facilities, which caused a lot of the people to get infected. And since they're old, most people in the United States have at least one or two underlying conditions, which now they call comorbidities. It was like a eldercide, so genocide of the elderly, and it was, like I said, just a heartbreaking, unnecessary, stupid. But you think these people aren't stupid, so there's a reason for it. They're just like, the Eskimos put their old people on ice floes, and send them out to, just like that. But just because somebody has to go into a care facility doesn't mean that they can't contribute something, or doesn't mean that why is in our society, why is contribution such a big thing? Why, when you get to a certain age, can't you just go, oh yeah, I just want to work in my garden, I just want to travel, I just want to enjoy life now after I've been, working so hard to make somebody else wealthy for decades, But other countries who have better retirement than the United States does, they did this elder in Sweden, which was a kind of a model of a country that didn't fully lock down. They did the same thing, and Italy did the same thing. Great Britain did the same thing, and I think
I was just about to mention Italy as well. I was watching an interview of John Pilger on the very underrated RT program Going Underground, and they are talking about the coronavirus crisis, and Pilger mentioned that in Italy, a lot of stupid voice is drying up. Yeah, so Pilger mentioned that in Italy, a lot of elderly patients who didn't have coronavirus or anything like that, but just many of them who had to get checkups and and whatnot, and just had to go for for whatever reason. A lot of them were sent to some of these care homes and so forth, and many of them just died.
Right.
and many of them just died. Many of them got infected from other
Mhm.
patients, or
Right.
because of the isolation. Because many of them were put in isolation and their families were not allowed to see them, or if they were allowed to see them, it was this weird thing of having to see them through like a window and stuff like that.
Right.
Many of them just basically died from a broken heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I was thinking of something while you were. Oh yeah. Also, like I said, most of the people who work in these things aren't trained medical professionals. So some of them infected the patients. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be with COVID-19. In Italy, I don't know if Pilger mentioned this in the interview. In Italy, some of the people who worked in the facilities just stopped coming to work. And some patients died of starvation and dehydration.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's just absolutely appalling.
And this goes into an interesting thing that that we talked a little bit off screen about, but this goes into because you had mentioned that this is the problem of capitalism, is that is that it works you to death, and then when it doesn't work you to death, and when you are getting your retirement, then you're just sort of cast aside, and you're just sort of cast aside. And I thought it was interesting when I was listening to a discussion on Cuba and how Cuba's response to the coronavirus crisis has been. This is when Dimitri Lascaris was running for the leadership of the Green Party of Canada, and they were talking about how in Cuba, which has a huge elderly population, because many people there, due to the good health care they get, do live a very, very long life. And they were saying that their response to coronavirus is no matter how old you are, if you got it, the Cuban doctors will try to use everything within their means to just
Yeah.
help the patient out and try to rehabilitate the patient. And even Iran, and that even Iran, with all of the monstrous sanctions that's been placed on Iran, because because it is also a culture in which you respect your elders completely. If you're sick with coronavirus, the Iranian doctors will use everything within their means to help the patient recover. Whereas I've noticed, and it's been quite disturbing to hear the languages of Western politicians and so forth. They all seem to talk about if you get coronavirus as an elderly person in Europe or in Australia or in Canada or or anywhere in North America, it's more like, okay, sorry, but you're on your own, and therefore how we're going to protect you is by keeping you, the elderly person, isolated from your kids, your grandchildren, your friends on the younger sides.
Right.
Any reflections on that, and on the whole elder side that's going on
Mhm.
in the U.S.
Well, I'd like to just back up a little bit and talk about Cuba. The last time I was in Cuba, we visited a community clinic, and I was so impressed by their approach to healthcare there. Before we started, I was telling you that I've done a lot of study on holistic health, and so Cuba, their approach is community based. So it's not like a Fauci up there telling us what we need to do. Because I mean, it's a little bit easier in Cuba. It's not as big as the United States, but something that is like relevant for Maine in the winter is not going to be relevant for California in the winter, right? So, so our country just tends to like collective punishment. We have this virus, so it doesn't matter how healthy you are, or how much time you spend in making yourself healthy holistically. You have to do the same measures as somebody who has diabetes, obesity and heart disease, for example. we have to keep the same measures as them. Cuba does a community-based healthcare. So each family in a certain community, because they have such a good education system that anything from preschool to university is free. And that includes, if you're not the university type, they have schools where what are those schools called where people learn how to do trade schools?
Yeah.
And so anyway, each family has a healthcare provider. That healthcare provider visits them in their homes. That healthcare provider even looks in their refrigerator, sees how they're eating, make sure that they're getting plenty of exercise and sunshine, which is easy in Cuba to get a lot of sunshine, fresh air, healthy food, and their food is organic. They had to learn after the 1980s special period how to grow food without, and that was a terrible period, but much good came out of that period, including their organic farming. And so anyway, the doctor will go into, and sometimes they sit and watch TV and have a beer with the family, and then might not be a doctor, might be a physician's assistant or a nurse or somebody trained. And so then if somebody's sick, that person can say, okay, what's your course of treatment? Can we treat this here in the home, or do you have to go see a doctor? And then it's kind of like this building. Oh my gosh, yeah, you're sick. Maybe you should check into a hospital. We should check you into a hospital. So it's like this family community-based system of healthcare. And I can't think of a better way to handle a healthcare crisis, rather than saying, okay, all of you are on lockdown. It's like being in prison and one prisoner steals a meatball and then everybody has to be in lockdown. That's what I feel like we've been this year. And so instead of doing these collective responses that obviously aren't working, if they were working, wouldn't it be gone by now? And so instead of doing something like that, to do more like, okay, well, what did you get sick with? Maybe we should go to your neighbors. Maybe we should see if your neighbor. So, so it's just like a wonderful, everything about Cuba is like 1,000 times more wonderful than here in the United States. But on the Eldercide front, we're basically an informational system right now to get information out to people about how elders are being mistreated. Now with the so-called vaccine, many elders are dying. I heard one elder care facility had 78 deaths after they were vaccinated. So that's something that we need to, that the numbers are just coming in on that. So that's something that needs to be incorporated.
And dying from the
reactions.
And dying from the Pfizer vaccine that they've been given,
Moderna, Pfizer, whichever one. Those are the two ones that we have in the United States right now. But so that's something that we have to look at what's developing in that situation. But it's very hard. I founded March on the Pentagon, but we can't go march on the Pentagon. So is there, what can we do if we can't go? Our big thing every year was to organize a march and a teach-in and a forum in Washington, D.C. Well, since I live clear across the country from those places and it's very difficult to travel now, so that's not really happening. So on the anti-imperialist front, there's not really a lot going on right now just because of that, because usually it's not a spontaneous thing. Like the Black Lives Matter was more, a lot of times was more spontaneous. So it's something that really has to take a year to organize. And, every year we're hoping we could have built on it. But then all of a sudden, we couldn't have one last year.
And another thing I wanted to ask about your campaign to help out, the victims of these, of these elderly people who have been basically the victim of systemic abuse and systemic elder abuse and
Mm-hmm.
neglect
Mm-hmm.
is because you were talking about the Cuban system and the Cuban approach to healthcare, and isn't in America you get the worst of both worlds because the public facilities for healthcare are either underfunded or you have these people from the for-profit world of healthcare treating it like a business and so forth like that. So you have that issue with the with the public healthcare system. But
Mm-hmm.
then since most of the US is a for-profit system, a for-profit elderly system, a for-profit healthcare system, a for-profit school system, so you basically get the worst of both worlds, right?
Right. Everything, it seems to just boil down to follow the money. Where's all this money going to? And even like here in California, we have Medi-Cal. And so even that it has a huge profit margin happening. My sister passed away a few years ago, 4 years ago now, from breast cancer. Well, with really complications to the treatment of breast cancer.
I was reading about that this week.
Right. And so she was had Medi-Cal, and she was down in Los Angeles at first. And the place for people who are on Medi-Cal to go get treated is the county USC. So on the first floor is all the poor people who have to do Medi-Cal. That ranges from mostly immigrants. It was mostly Hispanic people, Latinos. And so, but then you just go a few floors up and it's this hoity-toity, state-of-the-art, I forget what the clinic is called, but for women with breast cancer. And so it's just like a completely different world where
it's basically like you go to where the more affluent people are treated, and it's basically and it's like a 5-star hotel where compared to these poor, whereas compared to all these poor people, these immigrants who should be given the same treatment, it's like going to a 1-star hotel, right?
I would be like a Fleabag rent by the hour motel. I fly down or drive down to LA for every one of her appointments at first before she moved up here, and there would literally be these poor Latina women's kind of an oxymoron, Latina, just like there's no place for them to even sit. They'd be leaning against the wall crying, and it'd be like, what kind of shit is this? And so at one point she came to visit, and she couldn't go home because she just got too sick. And it was better up here because there's just not as much people. The treatment's not better, but the crowd, it wasn't as crowded, and there wasn't as much of that kind of stuff happening. But oh my God, it's just and cancer treatments used to be $11,000. Say you were taking a course of chemo, $11,000 through the whole course. Now it's $11,000 a week. So I started calling it the cancer industrial complex. And big pharma, whom we're supposed to trust with these jabs, these corona jabs, that minimum 2 years for a clinical trial, and then there's other testing, minimum of 7 years to really approve a vaccine. This went through in 9 months. So we're supposed to trust the people like Moderna and Pfizer, who have been profiting off of people's sickness. They want to keep people sick. They don't want to cure people. Healthy people brings no profits to them. So it's just a monstrous, diabolical system we have here. It's not In Cuba, it's person-centered. It's centered on each individual person. And people are like, now these days, if I like Chi-Com, these Chinese communists are just so evil, that like, what are you guys talking about? I don't think you even know what you're talking about. But communism is supposed to be like, oh, we don't care about individuals. We just care about the collective, which, is true in a lot of cases. But in Cuba, each individual matters, and they're not treated like they're, a group. They're treated like they're people, and each person is different. And so people want to demonize communism or whatever. But I'm like, if that's what communism is, bring it on. I'd like to see
Exactly.
a person in the United States besides someone like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or whatever, whoever, one of the stupid billionaires who have their wealth has grown by like $3 trillion over this year. Besides, I'd like to see one person in this country matter besides one of those people.
And then last question I want to ask then about this campaign's Eldercide, because it is related to the whole coronavirus crisis, is can you talk about the austerity that's actually been happening? I mean, of course, you can't talk about all, the entire United States, although
Right.
it's a nationwide scandal, what's been going on in the U.S. in terms of the response to coronavirus. But can you talk to us about some of the austerity that's been happening in in California related to the coronavirus, because that in and of itself is a huge scandal, how so much of the big businesses, the 401ks, which are on the stock market, have all been doing fine. They've all been bailed out, but the mom and pop shops, the mom and dad, bars, hair salons, and so forth, have all been completely devastated because they've not been bailed out from coronavirus.
Well, we know thousands in California, thousands of small businesses have had to close for good. And to me, it's like, I asked this question to my Facebook community last year. It's like, do you really want to get your hair cut at Gates Corp? Do you want to buy, do you want to buy all your groceries at Gates Corp? Because that's just like, seems like that's where we're heading. And I'm anti-capitalist, so this puts me a little bit in a precarious situation inside myself. So, but I also live in a town that it's not small, but it's not huge. And I've lived here for 30 years. So I've gotten to know restaurant owners, gym owners. The theater has been closed this whole year. My gym is a half a block away from me, has been closed and open 3 times this year. I think they've only been open since last March, maybe for about 2 months out of this whole year. And so to me, it's like, if it were, okay, how am I going to phrase this? If the government makes you close your business, then the government pays 100% of what you would have made in that time period.
Yeah.
And then that still allows you, that's payroll even, so you can still pay your people. That kind of cuts out the disastrous employment development department here in California that cannot get its shit together. Can I say shit on your show?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right. I think I already said it. So anyway, but that's not what's happening. The government is demanding, the governor, actually, it's not the government, because there's been no democratic decision making. The governor has not consulted with the legislature on any of this. The governor has made these proclamations that this is what's going to happen. The governor never tells us why he's doing it, what is his science behind what he's doing. And so these businesses, restaurants, like you said, restaurants and barbershops and hair salons and gyms, and my daughter, who's a massage therapist, she's been off work and on work all the time. And mostly these are people who are self-employed, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, the
they were,
so-called gig economy. And
yeah, so they weren't like really eligible for state help. But there was some loophole last year that if you had to close because of coronavirus, because the government said you could apply for unemployment, but it was very low, because most of the time when you're unemployed, you want to get your profit, you want to show on your tax return that your profit was low, so you have to pay taxes. So you have all these deductions and everything. So it's just really a huge mess. So anyway, yeah, and that's not what's been happening. What gets me is like, here, we've made $1 billion in loan available. Bullshit. I'm not paying you back. You're making me close. Why should I have to take a loan? And all my friends who own these small businesses, they're just like on the edge. They just like, we can't do this anymore. So a lot of people are just saying, forget it, we're opening, and then they're not paying the fines. And another thing that puts me in a difficult situation is the churches. Now, I don't go to church. I don't advocate for anybody to go to church. I don't think going to most churches is a healthy activity. But we have something in the U.S. Constitution, which I also think is bullshit. The Constitution is the separation between church and state, right? And it says Congress shall pass no laws, abrogating the right to free speech and freedom of expression and freedom of religion. So here, the Supreme Court of the United States just ruled that California churches could open. And again, most people are being very careful. They're being very careful with their health. They're not going to church and making out with strangers who are sick, And so anyway, it's just been a very, very difficult time here and a very difficult situation. And in California, in Cuba and Venezuela, the thing is what we've been talking about: education and healthcare and housing and power, electricity, water, things like that are human rights. They're not privileges that are only, if you can afford it, so these things are human rights guaranteed to each human being. And here in the United States, that's not the way it is. They're privileges to the wealthy. That's basically what our country is about.
Well, the coronavirus has shown globally, but has definitely shown in the U.S. that this capitalist system is completely archaic, and that it just doesn't, and that it, and that's, like, I'm all for, different, states, different, different provinces of whatever country having, having autonomy. But the response to coronavirus has shown how, how incoherent it all gets after a while. And I remember talking with Jay Watts of the Communist Party of Canada, and I was talking to him about, since you guys probably monitor China a lot, how has China's response to coronavirus has been compared to Canada? And he was saying to me that, that he had a friend of his that was an English teacher in China, and then went back to Canada because the pandemic hit, so he wanted to be back home. And he said that he thought it was bizarre, Canada's response to coronavirus, because it was just so incoherent compared to China, where, whatever you want to say about China's human rights abuses, but they just shut shit down. They said, look, we have a highly infectious diseases. We need to shut everything down. We need to give everybody, all the health care that they need. We need to build the facilities.
And they shut down for a very short time. And then you see pictures of Chinese New Year, or no, even they celebrate our calendar New Year plus the Lunar New Year. So pictures of them on New Year, all like together celebrating, happy, in like huge crowds. And the U.S. New Year, Times Square is empty except for their winker mayor, whatever, De Blasio. And so it's just really stupid, and it has been really super incoherent. Nothing makes sense, and these politicians have taken so much power onto themselves. Biden in 9 days signed 42 executive orders. That's not what the freaking president is supposed to do. It's 3 branches of government, right? And we here in California also have 3 branches of government. And I understand an emergency. Okay, but this emergency is not, you just can't say it's an emergency and then have it for the rest of your, term, which Newsom's might be shorter than he thought, because there's quite a,
Yes, there's quite a lot of outreach going on. Because aren't they trying to recall Gavin Newsom now as the governor of
and
California
I
because
think
of the human rights abuses of?
Yeah, I think they're going to qualify for the ballot. And there's only been one other recall that actually happened in my lifetime too, Gray Davis. So I think this is just an exciting time. But
this probably leads into the incoming Biden administration. Now, if Californians get rid of Newsom, who's going to replace him? Isn't it just going to be some more reactionary market fundamentalist Republican, or it doesn't really matter, right?
Well, I don't think it really matters that much. I mean, the last time we had the first and last time we had a governor recall Gray Davis, Schwarzenegger came. And he wasn't a reactionary. He was just like, I don't know. He didn't really do much good or bad, The best thing about him was his wife, Maria Shriver. She was pretty funny. But if he's recalled, we probably will get another Republican. But the Republicans in California, except for Reagan, may he be resting in hell, they're not really that reactionary, because California is a pretty liberal, and the Democrats really, the Democrat Party in California really acts like liberal Republicans.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, really liberal on social issues and stuff like that, but very neoliberal on economic issues. And it's just been terrible. I mean, for example, like Gavin Newsom, back in April last year, he made a mask mandate. Though we didn't have a mask mandate till April. But that was like 3 days after he just gave China, a company in China, $1 billion to make masks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like, so how much did he get kicked back from that? And then he spent another almost $1 billion. So almost $2 billion in masks from China. So yeah, it's just, I call it COVID as a racket. And so it really has made a lot of people rich, and Gavin Newsom has not just done some like very unconstitutional things here in California, and we have every state has its own constitution, and it really can't contradict the U.S. Constitution at all, but he's just really done some stupid things, like when he shut down dining, and then he goes to this really expensive restaurant in Napa that's something like $700 a plate with lobbyists from California Medical Association. And so, it was about 20 people, and we're only supposed to gather with no more than 2 other different households. Yeah. So I have 3 children, and they each live in their own house, and I live in my own house. So I'm supposed to be like which kid am I least happy with right now? Because they can't come to our gathering. But that's not what we do. We just always get together anyway. So he had this mandate where we can't go out. We can't, and if we go out, we have to wear a mask. And he's there with all his cronies, laughing and having a good time, no mask. and 20 people from more than 3 different households. That was the most exceedingly stupid thing that he could do at a time when we are, when we're all here suffering.
Unbelievable.
Where like restaurants that aren't the French Laundry are having to shut down because, they can't afford to be in business anymore. And he's out there at this, really the most expensive restaurant in California.
Well, while we're on the subject,
you don't have houses that you could go have a party at. You have to go display. It's almost like Marie Antoinette saying, "Let them eat cake."
Yeah, and last thing I wanted to talk to you about when it comes to coronavirus, before I get to this last topic, I want to talk to you about is how would because there's lots of debates I've noticed on the left in how to respond to coronavirus. So you have you have some on the on the left, or not even on the left, but on the whole policy wonk, who say that coronavirus, that the crisis is overblown, and the response of of making everybody stay home, lockdowns and stuff like that, is making the crisis even worse. But then you have some who say, guys, this is a highly infectious disease, and how are we supposed to combat this highly infectious disease? Therefore, we need to do lockdowns. But if we are going to suspend businesses, if we are going to have lockdowns, that's why a universal basic income is important. Suspending the rules of capitalism, so suspending rents and mortgages and the taxes people have to pay, is very important. Is very important. Now, where do you lie on this? Because I'm of the opinion that that coronavirus, that this is very much a very frightening disease, and I'm not against the lockdowns per se, as long as we get a UBI and people don't have to, and you suspend the stupid rules of capitalism, which is rents, mortgages, and whatnot. Where do you lie on that? Because yeah. What's your opinion?
First of all, we haven't got a UBI. People have gotten $1,200 and plus $600 for almost a year. And while airlines are getting tens of millions of dollars, and like we already said, these capitalists, their wealth has grown astronomically. These billionaires, so we might have a trillionaire pretty soon as a personal wealth hoarder. Yeah. This is what my response would have been if I were queen of the world, but obviously I'm not. Okay. We have many coronaviruses in our body floating around the world today. And it's not a new thing. It hasn't been a new thing. I've lived through many viral scares. Bird flu, swine flu, H1N1, whatever. It's always been, yes, people will get sick. Yes, people will die. But people get sick and die from many things, and it's sad, but none of us are going to live forever, right? You want to live forever? I could have a piece of an airplane fall on me right now. We just. I
would want to live forever, but not with climate change and the threat of nuclear war.
We don't have like a guaranteed amount of days. My son was killed when he was 24 in a stupid war, and so this is what has like happened over this year. It seems like only people who have died from COVID count, not the tens of thousands of people being killed in U.S. wars of imperialism. They just we just have forgotten that they exist now. And so my response would have been, we have vulnerable people in our society, right? We have people from the oldest to the youngest, who have autoimmune diseases, who have, especially in the United States. The United States is a very unhealthy society.
Yeah.
With 60% obesity in this society. And obesity is like, you're just overweight. No, it comes with diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. And I was reading
no adequate public transportation because
right,
the U.S. is in the back pockets of the car industry. Yeah.
right. And so I was just reading a story about this man who died like 3 hours after he got one of the jabs from the COVID. And his wife goes, he was really healthy. He just like was overweight and took high blood pressure medicine. That's not healthy. And why do you have high blood pressure? It's medicine isn't going to cure your high blood pressure. There's a reason you have high blood pressure. It's probably obesity, eating junk food. That's the main diet for Americans. But I'm getting away from this. So take the people who were vulnerable should have gotten all the resources that they needed to shelter in place, to have health care, to be protected. We don't have a universal basic income. That's never going to happen, Yuri. That's not going to happen here in the United States. So are we just saying that, the working class and the poor people and the homeless population that has exploded this year, are we just saying that they're going to have to live like dogs for the rest of their lives because some people might get COVID and die? People are going to get something and die all the time, all over the place. So are you a Star Trek fan?
My sister and brother are Trekkies, and yes, and so I have seen Star Trek sometimes.
So
I like the Next Generation.
Yeah, in the very first series with Captain Kirk and James whatever, who play William Shatner. That very first series, they go to a planet where disease has been eradicated. People can't move. They're like jammed in together, so I'm not. So what we're saying is we're not going to budge until there's no more viruses out there. That's kind of silly. So anyway, yes, protect the vulnerable, protect the people who are most at risk for this. And and I'm always like, let's do it by a case-by-case basis. My gym has been closed, like I said, almost all year. You know how many COVID cases have been at my gym this past year? 0.
And why do you think that is?
Why do I think there's been 0 cases? Because we're careful. We're careful when we go to the gym. The gym has always been really clean. I've never felt like, oh, I'm going to go there and get some terrible disease, So, but how about if there is a gym where there's an outbreak? Sure, close that for 2 or 3 weeks until it gets under control, right? Or if there's a restaurant, Sonoma County, by me, they just admitted there hasn't been any cases from restaurants, but they're closing restaurants. Why? So let's like target it. If there's a problem somewhere, but while that business is closed, the employees get paid 100%, the owners get paid 100%, right? And so that means that it's cheaper to do targeted shelter in place and targeted lockdowns, and then just like be clean. Don't like be like a Howard Hughes, because that's just going to make you sicker, right? And so, but be clean, but don't like pour chemicals all over your body all the time. And breathe fresh air, get exercise, eat healthy food as much as you can. And so that would have been my response to it if I were queen of the world. And I guarantee you it would be like China and we'd be over it by now.
Wow. Very interesting. Well, very interesting. And
I guarantee you that was my
well, very interesting.
An infomercial.
And people should take note of that. And the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is I really didn't want to talk to you about the incoming Biden administration and this whole right-wing pooch that that happened. But okay, it's a topic that we sort of can't escape.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about,
Can
what
I?
happened.
Can we
Yes.
cut for a second because my battery's dying. So I'm
Okay.
gonna have to
Actually,
go. I'm gonna
okay.
have to go run and get.
Okay. So, folks, we'll be right back. Cindy's having low batteries, and we're just going to cut, and we're going to do a part 2 of 1+1. So, yeah, we'll do that.